Hi, my name's Faye. 6 years ago, I was 17, bleeding under shattered glass after a car crash. My mom stood 10 feet away and screamed about Pilates class. My dad said, "She can crawl out." And my sister? She stepped over me like I was a bag of groceries someone forgot in the rain. They didn't know I'd live. They didn't expect I'd remember. And they never imagined I'd come back, with the keys to everything they once used to silence me. What kind of family leaves you to die? For a salon appointment. The rain had started as a whisper, just a light tap on the windshield as I turned out of the school parking lot. Zinnia didn't even say thank you when she slid into the passenger seat, pulling her hoodie over her perfectly straightened hair like the world owed her something. The sky was dimming, that strange blue-gray haze that falls over Charlotte in early autumn, the kind that makes everything look like it's holding its breath. I was 17, licensed but not trusted, allowed to drive only when it benefited someone else. That evening, my assignment was simple. Pick up Zinnia from cheer practice and drop her off at her Pilates class, on time. "Don't screw this up, Faye," Mom had warned. "She can't be late again. It reflects badly on her instructor profile." Of course. God forbid the family disappointment delay the golden child's workout. I didn't say a word. I never did. My hands gripped the wheel, and I focused on the road like it might lead me somewhere I mattered. The sedan stuttered over a pothole. The left turn signal made its weak, inconsistent clicking. The wipers smeared the windshield more than they cleared it. I mentioned it last week. Tread was almost gone. Dad said, "It's fine. You're not driving cross-country." Funny how life flips itself sideways just when you're starting to think, maybe, just maybe, you'll make it through the day. The crash didn't come with warning signs. One moment I was squinting at the road through the rain-streaked glass. The next, headlights. Sharp, fast, wrong. I jerked the wheel left, too late. Tires squealed, metal screamed. Zinnia yelled something I didn't catch. Then impact. Glass shattered, slicing through noise and time. My head hit something. Airbag? Door frame? It didn't matter. The world jolted, twisted, then stilled like someone hit pause on reality. Pain was the first thing that brought me back. It wasn't cinematic. No glowing white light, no slow pan out of the body. It was heat and pressure and a horrible metallic taste in my mouth. My leg throbbed, wet and heavy. My left arm refused to respond. My seatbelt dug into my collarbone, holding me captive in a tilted, crumpled world that didn't make sense. Zinnia's side was less damaged. Her door had flung open. She was sobbing, clutching her wrist, but upright, moving. I tried to reach her. "Zinnia?" My voice was a cracked whisper. She didn't look at me. I couldn't see much, just the blur of red from the dashboard and rain on the cracked windshield. Somewhere under the seat, my phone buzzed once and then went dead. I moved my fingers. They tingled but worked. My arm, not so much. I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this is where I die. In the rusted car my dad never serviced, driving my sister to a Pilates class she probably posted about more than she attended. But then, headlights. Not from the highway, from the driveway. My parents' SUV. Relief hit me so hard I nearly passed out. They came. They actually came. The passenger door slammed. I waited for footsteps to crunch toward me. They didn't. Instead, Mom's voice rang out, sharp and annoyed. "Her class starts in 10 minutes. I blinked. Was she talking about Zinnia? "She's fine," Dad muttered. "The car's totaled." My heart dropped. "No, it's junk. I said that last week," Mom snapped. "Why would you let her take this thing?" "She insisted," Dad replied. I whimpered, barely loud enough to hear myself. "Mom!" Nothing. Vera's heels clicked toward the open passenger door. I could hear her fussing over Zinnia. "Oh, sweetheart, you're shaking. Sit up. We've got to go or we'll lose the spot." "Mom!" I tried again. "My arm!" She didn't turn. Zinnia glanced at me, then she stood, slowly, deliberately, and stepped over my bleeding leg. She didn't look down, didn't flinch, Wearing her favorite pair of Lululemons, she climbed into the back seat of the SUV like I wasn't even there. Dad's voice came from the other side. If she could drive into a wreck, she can crawl out. The door shut. The SUV rolled away. I stared at the taillights until they disappeared into the wet road. I lay there, half pinned, half soaked, heart cracking open in ways I didn't know possible. My teeth chattered, not from the cold, but from something deeper, the kind of shock that makes your body forget it's alive. It was a full 20 minutes before anyone else came by. A woman in her 50s, kind eyes behind raindrop-speckled glasses. She pulled over without hesitation. "Honey, don't move," she said, already dialing. "Help's coming." I don't remember much after that. Flashes of paramedics, oxygen masks, straps tightening around my chest. The lights of the ER, bright, harsh, unforgiving. Then darkness. And silence. The hum of fluorescent lights above me was the first thing I registered. Cold air pricked at my skin beneath the hospital blanket, and my eyelids felt like they had been sealed shut with something heavier than sleep. I pried them open anyway. The ceiling blurred in and out of focus. Machines beeped softly behind me. A nurse adjusted my IV, murmuring something I couldn't quite grasp. "She's stable," she said to someone just beyond my range of sight. "Still no guardian? It's been over 6 hours." I tried to speak, but my throat was raw, scraped, burned, like I had swallowed gravel. The ceiling faded again. When I came to, the room had shifted slightly. I was no longer on a gurney, but in a hospital bed. The lights were dimmed, and a plastic cup of water sat on the tray beside me. My body ached in places I couldn't name. I lifted my hand, it shook like it didn't belong to me, and reached for the call button. A nurse appeared within seconds, kind eyes, neutral tone. "Hey there, you're awake. What time is it?" My voice was foreign, rasped. "Just past 10 a.m. You've been in and out since last night." She adjusted my pillow and glanced toward the door. "We haven't been able to reach your parents. We left 2 messages. No one's answered yet." I nodded, though my chest twisted at her words. I already knew they hadn't come. Somehow, I knew from the moment I opened my eyes. By noon, the tray beside me held discharge papers, a bottle of prescribed antibiotics, and a form marked pending guardian signature. Still, no one walked through the door. Not a single call. Not even a text. A social worker came by around 2 p.m. She was gentle, but I could feel the calculation behind her words, gauging whether I was abandoned or simply an inconvenience. "We can keep you here another night if we can't get a hold of anyone," she offered. I almost said yes, just to delay going back to a house that wasn't really mine anymore. But at 4:17 p.m., Vera arrived. She walked in like she was attending a PTA meeting, heels clicking, Starbucks in hand, sunglasses still on. Her voice was clipped, efficient. "I signed the papers. We need to go. They're charging extra for every hour." No hug, no eye contact. Rhett trailed behind her, arms crossed like he was in line at the DMV. His eyes flicked toward my cast, then away. I cleared my throat. "You didn't answer." "We were busy," Vera said, already turning. "You wrecked the car. You'll have to help pay for that." "I was driving Zinnia to her class." She paused just long enough to reply, "Well, next time maybe watch the road." "I couldn't feel my leg," I said quietly, more to myself than to her. Rhett finally spoke. "You're not paralyzed. Be thankful." I blinked at him, stunned. Vera tossed her cup into the trash near the door. Emily's Pilates instructor was furious. Do you know how long it took to get that time slot for her? She has followers now. She needs consistency. I let that sit in the air between us for a moment. They were more upset about Zinnia missing a class than me nearly losing a leg. That wasn't new, but this time, it didn't just hurt. It lit something up inside me, quiet and sharp. They signed the remaining forms with brisk efficiency. Not once did they ask how I felt. The nurse handed me my clothes, wrinkled and still damp from the accident. I dressed slowly, teeth gritted against the pain in my shoulder. They didn't offer to help. The social worker pulled me aside before we left. "Are you safe at home?" she asked softly. I hesitated. "I'll be okay," I said. I wasn't sure if I was lying. Outside, Vera unlocked the SUV from a distance and got in without looking back. Rhett opened the passenger side and slid in like he was running errands, not picking up his daughter from the ER. There was no small talk on the drive. No, "How are you feeling?" No, "We were worried." Only silence. As we pulled into the driveway, Vera finally broke it. "You need to start taking more responsibility. We're not going to baby you. You're 17. It's time you learned how the world works." I stepped out without a word. My crutches clicked against the concrete. Every movement sent sparks up my spine. Inside the house, nothing had changed. Zinnia sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She didn't glance up as I passed. I moved toward the stairs. My old room would still be there. My bed, my books, I hoped. But instead, I paused near the kitchen. Something in me shifted. A memory bloomed. The week before the crash, I had washed that car myself, scrubbed the tires, vacuumed the seats, Windexed the mirrors. I did it so Vera wouldn't complain, so Rhett might notice, so maybe, just once, someone would say, "Thanks, Faye." They didn't. I had scrubbed that car like I was trying to earn my way into their story. I thought if I worked hard enough, showed up enough, they'd see me. Turns out, I wasn't invisible. I was just optional. That night, I sat on my bed in the dark. The cast itched, my ribs ached, but none of it compared to the way my chest felt. Tight, empty, like a hollow shell someone forgot to fill. I picked up my phone, finally charged now. There it was. Zinnia's latest Instagram post. Her hair perfectly curled. A peace sign thrown at the mirror. Caption: "Drama, but still slayed, #blessed. Over 1,000 likes. Dozens of comments praising her resilience, her glow-up, her curls. "Your fam is iconic. You're the strong one, girl. Hope your sister's okay, but you ate." I didn't comment. I didn't cry. I just stared. And then I whispered to no one. They left me bleeding once. But this time, they won't see me crawl. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I closed my eyes, sure, but sleep didn't come. My body rested, but my mind felt like it was pacing in circles. Every time I tried to drift off, flashes of the crash came back, the crunch of metal, the silence after, and their SUV pulling away like I was just a cracked curb they had to step over. The next morning was quiet in the house, like always. Not peaceful, just muted. Vera was already gone. Rhett sat in the kitchen drinking black coffee like he did every day, as if I hadn't been in the hospital the night before. I made my way down the stairs slowly, crutch under one arm, fingers sore from gripping the handle too tightly overnight. My shoulder throbbed with every step. I tried not to show it. Zinnia lounged on the living room couch, wrapped in a plush throw blanket, scrolling through her phone. She didn't even glance up when I limped past. Her perfect nails tapped rapidly against the screen like nothing had happened, like I hadn't nearly died while driving her to a class she didn't thank me for. Vera's voice rang out from the kitchen speaker as her Bluetooth called in. "I told Jennifer it was just a minor scare," she said to whoever was on the line. "Zinnia handled it so well, and she still made her appearance. That girl is dedicated." I paused in the hallway, one foot still on the stair, heart sinking. Then she added, laughing, "Faye's fine. Just a bump? Teenagers are dramatic. A bump." I shuffled to the dining room and sat down slowly, eyeing the stack of mail Vera had dumped on the side table. Most of it was addressed to her or Rhett, a few medical envelopes in my name. I slid those into my lap when no one was looking. "You're dripping," Vera said from behind me, stepping inside. "Watch the new cushions. They're expensive." I looked at her. My bandages weren't wet. I wasn't bleeding. She wasn't even looking, just tossing words into the air because silence made her uncomfortable. That afternoon, when the house was quiet again, I took the mail up to my room. My room, the one that had a broken lamp no one replaced, the same sheets since 8th grade, and a closet where Zinnia stored her out-of-season clothes. I sat on the bed and opened the first envelope. A bill. The second, a copy of the discharge paperwork. The third stopped me cold. It was stapled to the back of the hospital folder. Something someone must have left in by mistake. Request to access patient life insurance policy. Filed less than 12 hours after the crash. Box checked. Deceased or critically incapacitated. My name at the top. The policy was under Vera Lancaster. I stared at the paper, then blinked like I could make the words change. My head buzzed, but not from medication. I stood up, paper still in hand, and walked to the bathroom mirror. I didn't recognize the face staring back. Pale, eyes rimmed red, but not from crying. I hadn't cried. Not yet. I grabbed my phone and searched for the hospital's front desk number. After being transferred twice, I ended up speaking to someone in patient records. I gave them my name and asked, as calmly as I could, if a request for my life insurance had been filed during my stay. There was a pause, the kind of pause that told me I wasn't crazy. Yes, the woman finally said. We had an inquiry on file. It was denied because you were still actively in care. Is something wrong? I hung up. I sat down on the bathroom floor. She thought I was going to die. No, she hoped I would. She planned for it. I stayed there for over an hour, legs numb, brain on fire. Later, I went back to my room, locked the door, and opened my laptop. Zinnia's Instagram was still public. The post from the night of the crash had over 2,300 likes now. One of the top comments read, "Only you could make tragedy look this good." I scrolled further. Someone had tagged her in a blog post. Influencer overcomes family emergency to keep her brand alive. There was a screenshot of her in the salon, curls perfect, captioned with her quote, "We can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond." She had given an interview to a beauty blog. The same night I was in surgery, no mention of me, no acknowledgement that I existed at all in that narrative. Her followers had turned her into a symbol of grace under pressure, the younger sister who kept it together while her family endured chaos. I wasn't the chaos. I was the dead space they paved over. That night, I pulled out every document I had, my birth certificate, school records, doctor's notes. I opened a new document and started a timeline, not of my injuries, of every instance I'd been erased. Every time Zinnia got credit for something I did. Every time Vera cut me off in conversation. Every time Rhett looked the other way. I wasn't compiling it to confront them, not yet. I just needed to see it all in one place. I logged off every account I had, deleted my social media, tore the Instagram app off my phone like a Band-Aid that had been stuck for too long. I hid the insurance paper under my mattress, and I wrote a single line in bold across the top of my timeline. If they wanted me gone, they should have made sure. A few days passed. Rhett went back to watching sports in the den. Vera hosted another networking brunch at the salon. Zinnia posted a sponsored video with a pink smoothie and a discount code. And I watched. I listened. I took notes. One evening, while organizing my old school folders, I found my scholarship acceptance letter. The one I had been so proud of the year before. The one Vera had told me she mailed to the college with all the right paperwork. I held it up to the light. Something was off. The signature line, where my guidance counselor had originally signed, was now a photocopy. The date had been altered. I flipped through my files, found the original copy I had scanned. 2 different versions, 2 different paths. One of them wasn't mine anymore. The paper trembled slightly between my fingers as I read it again, holding it to the light from my bedroom window. It was late morning, sunlight pushing past the old blinds, striping my wall with dusty yellow lines. The scholarship letter, once the most exciting piece of mail I had ever received, now looked like a lie. Or worse, a theft. The original scan on my computer, saved from the day I got it, had a real signature, the one in my hand. A copy, a poor forgery passed off like I wouldn't notice, like I wouldn't remember. I pulled up the scholarship portal on my phone, fingers moving carefully so I wouldn't jostle my healing shoulder. My heart dropped when I saw the recipient name listed under the current academic cycle, Zinnia Lancaster. That wasn't a typo. I sat still for several minutes, the only sound in my room the slight hum of the box fan in the corner. Outside my door, I could hear the dryer tumble and Vera's voice on speakerphone, chatting casually with someone from the salon about an upcoming spring showcase. "She's been preparing for this since winter," Vera said, pride coating every syllable. It's hers to lose, she just knows how to present herself. That word, present. It stuck like a thorn. Present herself. As if that were the real skill being measured. Not grades, not work, not pain. I remembered those hospital forms she asked me to sign when I was still on morphine. Just school paperwork, she'd said. Standard stuff. I was groggy, couldn't focus. I remember my hand shaking as I signed. She smiled and kissed my forehead. That's my good girl. Zinnia deserved the opportunity. That's what she said on the phone. I stood up, walked slowly down the hallway toward the kitchen, still holding the altered letter. Vera was pouring herself lemon water. She looked up, saw the paper in my hand, and didn't flinch. That was mine, I said, voice low but steady. She blinked, then gave a slight shrug. It went to who would use it. It was addressed to me. And what did you plan to do with it, Faye? She asked, tone casual like we were discussing groceries. You can barely keep up. Zinnia already has the connections. She presents well. She speaks with confidence. You hide. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. I'm not hiding, I said finally. She placed the glass on the counter, adjusted her blouse sleeve. What's yours is what you fight to keep. You didn't fight. I took a breath, a deep, deliberate one. Then maybe I start. She tilted her head, examining me like I was a painting that didn't match the frame. Don't overreact. You've always been sensitive. That word again, sensitive, as if reacting to theft, to betrayal, to being erased from your own story was an emotional flaw. I walked away without replying. Back upstairs, I closed my door, sat down at my desk, and opened my laptop. My hand still shook slightly, but I started typing. I wrote an anonymous email to the Scholarship Foundation. I didn't name names. I attached the scanned copies of both letters, the original and the altered one. I stated that a signature had been forged and a scholarship redirected without consent. I included the date I'd been hospitalized and noted that I'd been medicated when I signed school forms. Then I hit send. The next day, I started collecting everything else. Screenshots of texts from Vera, ones that said, "Let Zinnia have this one." Photos of me washing the car the week before the crash. An audio file from a voicemail Zinnia left on a friend's phone, one she forgot I had access to, saying, "She's too soft. She wouldn't last a semester." I didn't know what I'd use it all for, but I knew one thing. I wouldn't be caught unprepared again. The energy in the house shifted. Zinnia avoided eye contact. She came and went more often without a word. Vera was short with me, giving commands instead of conversation. Rhett, as usual, stayed silent. He existed like wallpaper, there, but never really engaged. It became clear I wasn't just invisible anymore. I was a problem they wanted solved. One night after dinner, I approached Vera as she loaded the dishwasher. "If you take one more thing that was meant for me," I said calmly, "I'll take everything back." She paused, hand still gripping a ceramic plate. "Take what?" she asked with a dry laugh. "You don't own anything." I smiled then, small and tight. "You'd be surprised what I'm keeping." She didn't ask what that meant. She didn't have to. Later that week, I walked home from the community library after using the public computer to print a few documents. It was dusk, the kind that made the streetlights flicker as if uncertain whether to turn on. As I passed the salon, I slowed my steps. The front windows were dark, the open sign flipped. Vera had gone home early. I stood there, staring at the space where she built her little kingdom, the place where Zinnia had taken countless selfies, the place that had, in so many ways, symbolized their version of success. Then I noticed something. Next door, the adjacent storefront had a white paper taped inside the glass. "For lease, available immediately." I stood there for a long time. A car drove by, music blaring through the cracked window. Somewhere down the block, someone laughed too loud. And me? I smiled for the first time in weeks. If I couldn't reclaim what they took, I'd build something next to it, and make them watch. The wind had picked up since I'd passed the "for lease" sign. By the time I got back home, the clouds were rolling fast across the sky, making the porch lights flicker like something out of a bad horror movie. I stood in the driveway for a long minute, watching the windows glow with the familiar yellow light of the house I'd grown up in. A place that had once meant something more than walls and a roof, but tonight it felt smaller than ever, shrinking around me, or maybe I was just outgrowing it. Inside, Vera was at the kitchen table with her tablet, reading through an email from her salon supplier. Rhett had the television on, muted, watching the evening news as if anything that happened beyond our street was worth his attention. Zinnia's laughter floated from upstairs, probably FaceTiming one of her perfect little minions about her latest beauty campaign. No one looked up when I walked in. I went straight to my room. That night, sometime after midnight, I packed. Not in a dramatic, noisy way. There were no slammed drawers, no thrown clothes, just quiet, careful movement. One bag, just enough. Birth certificate, driver's license, the insurance paper I'd hidden under my mattress, a flash drive with all my files, my old laptop, a few pairs of jeans, 2 sweaters, my walking boots. No photos, no journals. Nothing they'd notice missing. At 3:11 a.m., I left a note on the kitchen counter. I didn't bother sealing it in an envelope. It said, "If I am a burden, then I will no longer ask to belong." I stepped outside into the cold without looking back. The air had a bite to it that early in the morning, and my knee still ached from the accident. But I walked 5 blocks to the bus stop, not a soul out except the occasional porch light and a raccoon that darted across the street. The last city bus rolled up 10 minutes later, and I boarded with 4 crumpled dollar bills and a deep breath. The driver gave me a glance, didn't ask questions. That ride was the quietest form of freedom I had ever felt. No one texted to ask where I was. No one called. They didn't even pretend. And somehow, that stung worse than if they had yelled. The next few hours moved slowly. I arrived at a quiet residential street just past 5 a.m., the sun barely coloring the sky. I'd texted someone I hadn't spoken to in nearly 2 years, Mr. Harris, my old high school counselor. He'd been kind once, during a rough patch my sophomore year when my grades dipped and no one in my house seemed to care why. I remembered his words. "You don't have to be loud to be seen." I didn't know where else to go. He met me at the door in a robe and slippers, hair gray at the temples, face lined but warm. "You look like someone who needs one adult to say yes," he said. I nodded. I couldn't trust my voice yet. He didn't press me for answers, just led me down a narrow hallway to a small guest room at the back of the house. The wallpaper was peeling, the bed squeaked, the radiator knocked, but it was clean, and it was mine. For now. I collapsed onto the mattress, exhaustion crashing over me like a wave I'd been bracing against too long. For the first time in weeks, I slept without interruption. The following morning, Mr. Harris made oatmeal and coffee. He didn't ask how long I'd be staying. He didn't ask what had happened. He just poured me a second cup and said, "There's a temp agency 3 blocks down. If you're looking for work, they know me. I'll vouch." That week, I started part-time at a local call center. It was the kind of job no one wanted, repetitive, thankless. But it paid enough for me to feel like I had a foothold. I saved every receipt, every stub, every login code. My evenings were quiet, spent reading articles on community college enrollment, financial aid, and how to apply under a new mailing address. I was technically still a minor, but the world had long since treated me like an adult. One night, I sat on the floor of the guest room with my laptop, a legal pad, and 3 old shoeboxes full of documents. I wasn't just collecting anymore, I was archiving. The timeline I had started back at Vera's house grew by the page. This wasn't about revenge, it was about truth. It was about proof, and it was about power, the kind you earned quietly and held tight. On a Saturday morning, 2 weeks after I'd moved in, I bought a gallon of pale blue paint from the hardware store down the block. Mr. Harris helped me carry it home. I spent the afternoon painting the guest room walls with slow, deliberate strokes, humming to myself. At one point, he passed by the door and said, "Looks like you're making it yours." I smiled, smudged with paint. "No one's name but mine on the lease," I replied. He paused, eyes kind. "That's how it should be." That night, I opened a used copy of a business law textbook I'd picked up for $2 at a thrift store. Chapter 1. Ownership and Liability. I took notes. I read until my eyes blurred. I reread the chapters on LLCs, landlord-tenant law, and sole proprietorships. Every word made me feel less like the girl they left behind and more like the woman I was choosing to become. On Monday morning, I applied to a local community college's online program for trauma counseling. I wrote my application essay at the same desk where Mr. Harris used to grade student essays and submitted it without telling anyone. Days passed. Then a week. Then one evening, I came home from work to find a small envelope on my desk. Inside, written in clean, looping penmanship, was a note. "You remind me of someone who didn't give up either." No name signed, just that sentence. But I knew who it came from, and I folded it carefully, placed it inside the journal where I kept all my receipts. They gave my room to dust. I gave myself a future. That afternoon, after class, I opened my phone to check an email from the bursar's office about a tuition update. But before I could tap into my inbox, the screen lit up with a link texted by a former classmate, one I hadn't spoken to in over a year. "You seen this yet?" the message read, followed by a laughing emoji. I tapped the link. The video opened instantly. Zinnia, in full makeup and an outfit that looked sponsored, smiling into the camera. "Hey y'all, so today I'm doing something super personal. This used to be my sister's room. But after everything, we decided to turn it into a space that reflects positivity and forward movement." I froze. The frame behind her showed my old bookshelf, still dented from the crash when it was moved into storage. My high school trophies, once lined up in order, now randomly stacked in spray-painted gold, serving as ironic decor. Zinnia twirled. "We're turning trauma into glam. Because let's face it, some things are too sad to keep around." I didn't feel my jaw tighten. I just noticed it was already clenched. The comments rolled in faster than I could read them. "Slay Queen! Love the transformation." "Your sister must have been so dark." "LOL, poor girl. She's just dramatic." I locked the phone and put it face down on the table. My fingers trembled. That room, my room, was where I used to read under the covers with a flashlight because Vera thought overhead light was a waste after 10 p.m. It was where I wrote my first college essay, where I'd cried the night my acceptance came in because no one in my family even said congrats. Now it was a backdrop for a rebranding video. I turned my phone back over, opened my notes app, and typed exactly one sentence. "What if the room you glamorize was where someone bled alone?" I didn't sign it. I posted it anonymously to a trauma survivors forum. By morning, it had been reshared over 8,000 times. No hashtags, no photos, just those words. People started replying. This hit too close to home. Thank you for saying it. I needed to read this today. That same morning, a memory hit me out of nowhere. It was from 2 days after I'd been released from the hospital. My leg was still wrapped, my shoulder stitched and raw. I had limped into the kitchen, trying to pour myself cereal with one arm, when Vera poked her head in. "We're short-staffed at the salon," she said, not bothering to greet me. "You can help." I blinked. "Mom, I can't even lift my—" "You can wipe. That's all I need. Don't be so selfish." I didn't even have energy to fight her. I went. The salon smelled like lilac and bleach. The women at the front desk barely glanced at me. Vera handed me a toilet brush and a spray bottle. "You want to stay home and rest? Then make yourself useful first," she said, loud enough for her client to hear. I spent the next hour on my knees, scrubbing tile grout while she laughed about my dramatic reaction to a car accident. I didn't cry then either, but I remembered every minute. That night, I sat across from Vera at the kitchen table. I looked her in the eye and said, "I'm not your mess to clean." She didn't miss a beat. "No, you're the mess I have to keep explaining," I smiled. "Then stop lying." She scoffed and went back to her laptop. I walked away before she could say anything else. In my room at Mr. Harris's house, I started researching business registrations. I knew Vera had her salon lease under her name and had renewed it every 3 years like clockwork. The building itself, though, was owned by a retired businessman named Gerald Myers. A quick county records search told me everything I needed to know. He was 78, semi-retired, and looking to liquidate properties before moving to Florida. I reached out under a pseudonym, Dr. Faye Morgan. It was technically true. I was registered as a counseling trainee under my middle name and newly changed surname. I wasn't hiding. I was moving differently. Mr. Myers answered within a day. We met at a diner off the interstate. He ordered eggs and bacon, and I sipped weak coffee and explained my vision. Therapy services for underserved youth, built in a familiar setting but offering something new. He nodded, listening. You want the space next to Vera's salon? He asked finally. Yes. You're related? Let's just say we used to be close. He slid the lease paperwork across the table. Make it yours. Weeks passed in silence. I didn't announce anything, didn't post, didn't brag. Then one morning, Vera stood at the mailbox in her silk robe, flipping through letters. She paused at a plain envelope. No return address. Her name was listed on the exterior. Inside was a copy of the lease transfer document. To Dr. Faye Morgan. Her fingers tightened on the page. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. I watched from across the street, quiet, still. The reflection she saw in the paper wasn't just a new name. It was the ghost she thought she'd buried. They saw a ghost in the lease paperwork. But I was very much alive. 3 days passed between the moment Vera opened that envelope and the morning of her annual spring beauty event. I waited, intentionally, until the very last moment to strike. Timing wasn't just about showing power. It was about reclaiming the hours, the years, the entire season of my life that had been stolen and silenced in that very space. The sun rose over the salon the morning of the event like it always had, gold and unapologetic. From across the street, I watched the glass storefront sparkle, banners fluttering with pastel pinks and gold foiling. Glow into spring, the ultimate beauty showcase. I couldn't help but scoff softly. Vera had always been about appearances, what the house looked like, what the salon looked like, what her daughters looked like. But she never paid attention to the details that mattered, like the lease name on a building. I arrived before dawn, using the keys the landlord had given me. The building was dark, empty, still carrying the faint scent of last night's bleach and rose diffusers. I moved through the front area with deliberate steps, removing posters from windows, gathering client folders, setting them aside in sealed boxes. Nothing destroyed, nothing stolen, just transitioned. Ownership meant documentation. I had it all. Next, I walked to the front desk and replaced the digital welcome screen with a static banner. This event has been canceled. Please direct all inquiries to Dr. Faye Morgan. It blinked in calm white letters on a dark slate background. Clean, clear, unapologetic. I placed the framed quote at the reception desk last. She can crawl out. 6 years old now, that sentence. I hadn't needed to scream. I only needed to remember. With that, I locked the door and left for a coffee down the street, returning just before 9 a.m. to wait on the sidewalk as the guests began to arrive. They came in waves, local influencers with matching tote bags, mothers and daughters with tight curls and loose wallets. Zinnia showed up 30 minutes later in a peach suit and sunglasses, followed by Vera and Rhett. Her phone was already out, filming. "Good morning, beauties," she called to the camera. "We're kicking off the season with something unforgettable." That, at least, was true. As they reached the front entrance, I walked up the steps and stood just inside the lobby with a clipboard in hand. Zinnia froze first. Then her coffee cup slipped from her hand, cracking against the tile floor, espresso puddling around her expensive heels. Vera stepped forward, confusion flashing across her face, then recognition. Rhett blinked at me, but stayed silent, as always. "What are you doing here?" Vera asked, her voice tight. "Just helping with operations," I said calmly. She pushed past me toward the front desk. Then she stopped cold. There, facing her, was the framed quote. Her own words, her eyes widened. This isn't." A journalist, one I recognized from a local lifestyle magazine, leaned over to another guest. "Wait, is that her?" she whispered. "The one from the Post? From the blog story?" I stepped forward. "This space was once used to bury me," I said, loud enough for everyone in the reception to hear. "Now I use it to unearth the truth." I handed Vera an envelope, Her hands shook slightly as she opened it. Eviction notice. Signed, notarized, legally sound. "You don't own this building," she snapped. "I do now," I replied. "And your lease expired 60 days ago. You were notified." "You tricked us," she hissed. "No, you ignored the paperwork. I followed it." Silence rippled through the room. One of the stylists who used to work under Vera walked in and stopped mid-step, then looked at me, then at Vera. She stepped toward me slowly. "You did this?" she asked, voice low. I nodded once. "Good," she said. "About time someone did." Vera's lips curled. "You think this makes you noble? Look at what you've done. You've embarrassed your family." "You did that all by yourself," I said. Zinnia turned, tears streaking her mascara, and pushed through the crowd, disappearing out the front door. Clients followed. Some murmured, some shook their heads. One woman tore up her event flyer and dropped it in the trash can near the reception. Within 10 minutes, the salon was half empty. Vera stood there like a statue, disbelief etched across her face. She finally turned to me and whispered, "We can talk, as a family, behind closed doors." I took a breath. "You taught me family is something you earn. You didn't." She flinched. I walked past her slowly, not triumphant, just finished. I paused at the reception desk, straightened the quote frame one last time, then pushed open the front door and stepped into the spring light. Behind me, as the door gently shut, I heard the faint clatter of the frame falling face down onto the tile floor. She didn't pick it up, and I didn't look back. "You left me bleeding once. I left you bleeding influence." After the salon incident, the silence was louder than the confrontation. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post. I didn't even speak about it with Mr. Harris when I returned to the guest room that night. I simply made tea, opened my laptop, and got to work. By dawn the next day, my inbox lit up. Subject: Event cancellation statement needed. Subject: Media inquiry. Salon change of ownership. Subject: Speaking opportunity. Local panel on generational estrangement. I ignored all of them. Instead, I brewed another cup of tea and wrote a reply to an email that had arrived just after midnight. It was from Zinnia. Subject: One last ask. The body of her message was brief. "I'd like to rent the salon space for a one-time event, something to rebuild the family name, a redemption story. It would be nice to remind people of our legacy. Let me know if we can work something out. Z." Legacy? I stared at the screen for a full minute before opening a new window and drafting my reply under my business email. Request denied. Legacy revoked. I didn't elaborate. I didn't gloat. And yet, within the hour, my email was making the rounds. Someone, probably a former stylist or a disgruntled client, leaked a screenshot to a local lifestyle blog. The headline the next day read, "Revenge or Reckoning? Anonymous owner denies infamous influencers return to spotlight." The comments weren't kind. Finally, someone stood up to that family. This was long overdue. She earned that no. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Instead, I logged into my old blog, one I had abandoned a few years ago. Back when I still believed silence was survival, I updated the theme, cleaned up the sidebars, and created a fresh post titled, "What They Didn't Know Was." It began with the accident, then it backtracked, the forgotten birthdays, the repurposed room, the Instagram post made while I bled in an emergency room, the scholarship that changed names, the insurance policy that was activated before I was even stabilized. No names were mentioned, but the story, it was mine. I uploaded receipts, dates, screenshots, statements. I didn't spell it out. I let the timeline speak for itself. The post went live at 8:12 p.m. By midnight, it had 11,000 shares. By noon the next day, it was trending nationally in mental health spaces. By the end of the week, the number had passed 200,000. I didn't watch the numbers. I watched the comments. I've been the invisible one too. This feels like my childhood in print. Please keep telling your truth. I kept quiet. Just refresh the page once in a while. That was enough. Then, the unraveling began. Vera's name was quietly removed from the church newsletter. The salon's client list, once booked solid, dwindled within days. A wedding planner rescinded a long-standing booking for bridal hair. Zinnia's beauty brand sponsors dropped her silently, no public statement. Then came the murmurs. I always wondered why Faye disappeared. She was always so quiet, never smiled much. Well, now it makes sense, doesn't it? They weren't loud, but they echoed. One afternoon, about a week after the blog post exploded, Rhett showed up at my office, not announced, not requested. He stood in the waiting area holding a paper grocery bag and looking like a man who'd just walked through a thunderstorm without getting wet, damp, disoriented, but not truly changed. I won't stay long, he said. I just wanted to give you these. He handed me the bag. Inside were photos, childhood ones. Me at the beach. Me holding a third-place science fair ribbon. Me in the background of Zinnia's birthday parties, always off to the side. And at the bottom, a folded note. I should have done more, he said, voice low. I should have done something. I didn't cry. I didn't hug him. I just looked him in the eye and said, you still can. He didn't ask how. I didn't offer suggestions. But as he left, he paused at the door. I didn't know everything, he murmured. But you knew enough, I replied. That evening, Zinnia posted a photo of the two of us from when we were kids, matching Easter dresses, fake smiles. Her caption read, some people never heal. They just hurt others. It was bait. But I didn't bite. I let the comments roll in. This is low. She's telling her story. Let her. Not you playing victim now. She deleted it within hours. I didn't respond. Not online. Not through email. Not in a call. Because the truth had already done its work. The following week, I was invited to speak at a trauma survivors panel hosted by a local nonprofit. It was a quiet gathering. No cameras, no press. Just folding chairs, paper name tags, and people who carried pain in their shoulders like weight they'd forgotten how to drop. When the organizer introduced me, I stood at the podium, palms flat against the wood. I didn't have a script. I used to think justice was getting an apology, I said. A few heads nodded. But now I think justice is being able to tell the truth out loud and not ask for permission. And I told it. Not everything. Not the sharpest edges, but enough. Later that night, I went home, made tea, and sat in front of the mirror in my bedroom. Not to check my makeup, not to rehearse anything, just to look at the face that had survived it all. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just clear. I turned the key and stepped inside just before sunrise. The hallway lights had already been set to dim, casting a gentle warmth across the reception area. The faint scent of lavender diffused through the room, calming but not overpowering. The air inside the resilience room always felt a little thicker, a little more sacred than other places. Maybe it was the silence we respected here, or maybe it was the weight we gently lifted off the shoulders of the kids who came in. The teens sat quietly in the waiting area, some scrolling their phones, others doodling in worn notebooks. No one made small talk. They didn't have to. This was one of the few spaces where they weren't expected to perform. I stepped behind the front desk, greeted my assistant with a nod, and picked up a folded piece of paper that had been left for me. My name was scrawled across the front in handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a note. I thought I was the only one. No signature, no return address. But I knew who it came from. One of the girls who had sat in that very lobby months ago. Quiet, shaking, and not making eye contact. She had left without a word the first 2 sessions. On the 3rd, she stayed. By the 5th, she spoke. On the 8th, she laughed. This was why I built this place. Later that week, we held a small ceremony, our first ever. Just 30 people. Parents of students who had stayed clean for 6 months. A handful of teachers from the nearby school who had quietly donated. And one special guest, a teenager named Kayla, who had submitted her application for a scholarship we launched that spring. She stood at the podium, face trembling as she held her note cards. I don't have a lot of people in my life who say, I'm proud of you, she began. So when someone said it here, I didn't know what to do. She sniffled, wiped her cheek. But now I say it to myself. And that's because of this place. I walked over to her slowly and handed her the certificate. You don't need their applause to be proud of yourself, I said, softly but clearly. Kayla crumbled into tears, and the room stood, clapping. I didn't cry, but I did feel something loosen in my chest, like a thread that had been tangled for years, finally unraveling just enough to breathe. A week later, I spoke at a panel hosted downtown. It was simple, just 5 of us sitting in chairs, no press, no microphones. Just a few dozen folding chairs, a circle of stories, and a moderator who didn't cut anyone off. When it was my turn, I stood and said, "They saw me bleeding and walked away. Today, I open doors for those who were told they were in the way." I didn't need to say more. Afterward, people came up and asked for hugs. Others slipped notes into my palm, words they hadn't yet found the courage to say out loud. I held each one like a sacred thing. 2 days later, I got the final text from Vera. It came in during a break between sessions. "So you've won. Hope it was worth it. No hello, no name, no apology." I stared at the screen for 3 seconds, then pressed delete. I didn't even bother saving the number. Back in my office that evening, I turned off the lights and sat behind my desk. On the wall behind me hung 2 photos. One was of me at 6 years old, missing teeth, holding a stuffed raccoon I used to carry everywhere. The other was the ribbon-cutting photo from the day we opened the resilience room, me in a simple dress, scissors in hand, eyes locked on the future. I wasn't fully healed, but I was whole. Outside, a familiar figure paused at the front window. Vera. She stood for a moment, looking through the glass. She could see me at the desk. I made no move. Neither did she. She turned and walked away, her silhouette small against the evening light. No one called her name. No one followed. The next morning, someone sent me a screenshot of Zinnia's latest video. She was doing sponsored content for a new line of hair extensions. Her voice was bright, her curls flawless, her caption hollow. The comments section was quiet. No engagement, no praise, just silence. And somehow that silence echoed more than anything else. That night, I closed up the clinic as usual, flipped the sign to closed, locked the doors, set the alarm, and turned off the lights. As I stepped out into the quiet street, I looked up at the sign painted across the window, the resilience room. Then I whispered, to no one in particular, I wasn't supposed to make it out. But I didn't just survive, I built something better. They stepped over me once. Now, I build floors no one can fall through. Sometimes, healing doesn't look like forgiveness. It looks like building something no one thought you could, not out of revenge, but resilience. Faye's story reminds us that being erased doesn't mean we disappear. Have you ever been the one left behind, only to rise stronger on your own terms? If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, true life journeys that stay with you long after they end. Let us know in the comments. What would you have done if you were Faye?